Welcome to Elevate and Thrive, Breaking Barriers for an Empowered Life. I'm your host, Jen Smith, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. In this podcast, we are going to dive deep into the transformative stories of individuals who have faced adversity head-on, emerged stronger, wiser, and more empowered. I'm here to share those stories with you, to remind you that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always light at the end of the tunnel, and there is a sunrise waiting to greet you. To inspire you to break through your own barriers, rewrite your own story, and to step into the light of your true potential. So whether you're facing your own challenges or simply seeking inspiration to elevate your life, know that you have come to the right place. Together, we are going to break barriers, defy expectations, and soar to new heights. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I cannot wait to see where it takes us. Remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your journey to an empowered life starts now. Thank you, everybody, for being here today on the Elevate and Thrive podcast. I have a very special guest today. I'm so excited to be talking to her. We have been connected on social media for a while now, and she's somebody that is doing amazing work, and she is giving people and animals a voice, and that's something that I'm extremely passionate about myself. She is an intuitive. She works with animals and their owners and translates for them. She does a lot of energy work and really works with people and humans who want to communicate something. Terri J is with us today, and I'm just so excited that you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
Absolutely. For those of you who are new to Terri's work, she is an author. She has done many podcast interviews, and you can find a ton of information on her website. And I would highly recommend you go do that because she's got some great stuff on there. These natural abilities that we're born with as we start to go through life, society and people and things around us start to turn that off for us and take us in a different direction. When I was a kid, I was born very intuitive also. Animals were always my friend. I spoke their language, they spoke mine, and it was really an understanding through feeling. More so than anything. I was very connected to them. And I also had a lot of experiences with the spiritual realm. People that have passed over, angels actually used to visit me. And this is something that I don't really talk about in regards to myself. I love that Terri's here today because I think that she is really helping people step into their natural abilities and their authenticity. Can you, Terri, talk about some of your experiences and how you came to get into this line of work that you do?
I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what happened with me. I did a horseback therapy program for about 35 years off and on. And back in 1990, I picked a kid up out of his wheelchair and put him on the back of one of my horses. And he looked at me and he said, "Ouch, I have a cramp in my hip." Well, that's kind of normal with a CP child. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, here, sit this way. It'll take the cramp out." And he said, "Hey, you can hear me." And I said, "Well, of course I can hear you." It didn't dawn on me at the time that he was completely nonverbal. So we went about our business and he was yippy yapping about the school play, his little girlfriend, just all kinds of things that had nothing to do with doing the horseback riding and the horseback therapy. So I took him off the horse. He put him back in his wheelchair. He went back to class. And the gal who was helping me, I'll never forget it. She said, "Boy, he's sure talking great." The light bulb still didn't go on. I said, "Well, he's very bright. Just because he has CP doesn't necessarily mean that he has any cognitive issues." And she looked at me and she said, "Terri, he didn't say a word. He can't, remember? If I was a horse, I would have done a buck fart snort because I was spooked. I was really spooked." And that, of course, we know that's what they do when they're spooked.
Right.
And so she held the horse and I went back in the classroom and he had typed out on his computer, "Horse lady can hear me." He put a band around his head with a pointer. And so on the computer, he typed out, "Horse lady can hear me." And I was just in shock. And the teacher was looking at me like I was nuts. Then I stood there talking with him, really realizing that we were having this completely telepathic communication. And I went outside and I told the gal what happened. It's just very matter of fact. She said, well, if you can hear that, you ought to learn to communicate with the horses because all animals are telepathic. And I was like an idiot, so naive. It's like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Just a goof. And there were no books at the time. This is back in 1990. I think there was You Are Psychic, which I hate that word. And then there was one gal's book that was no help whatsoever. She was an animal communicator. No help whatsoever. Just sit there and let the feelings float over you. And I thought, what? It just didn't work. I was just sort of off on a journey. And all I wanted to do was animal communication. And you know how it is, man plans, God laughs. So when I would start doing readings on animals, people that had passed for that person started coming through. And that was weird. But the details I got were very healing for the person that I was communicating with. I knew nothing about what happens to us when we die. Nothing. And now it's like, oh, yeah, it's really cool. And everybody loves it. And they're all happy. And they live in their positive memories. And nothing negative goes to the other side. And, it's just really fun. I loved my two favorite things are readings on horses and communicating with people that have passed. Those are my two favorite things.
When I was going through your website, I saw you talk a lot about how we all have these abilities.
Yes.
And I think that this is so natural. What happens is then we're told that it's not natural. And that if you're seeing things or you're hearing animals talking to you or whatever, that maybe there's something wrong with you.
You're told you're a liar. That's the worst thing is I have clients that remember being punished as a child for lying. They weren't lying. They were just seeing non-physical things.
Right. I think what happens is we form these beliefs around it then.
Sure.
So I know that you're also a coach. I'm a coach as well. And so I work a lot with these belief systems that run the programs that we literally carry out our entire life.
I think that's why it gets so screwed up because you have people, even television mediums that are saying they're special and they have gifts and they make it more woo-woo and they don't have discernment. Right. So they're sharing negative things, which they're dumpster diving if they're doing that because they're, people that go to the other side, people and animals, nothing negative goes with them. So that negative energy garbage gets shed off and left behind. And so if they're getting negative things like, oh, they have unfinished business or, oh, they have regrets or anything like that, then they're basically in the negative energy the person shed off. It is not the person how they are on the other side. They're really doing a terrible, terrible disservice to people because they're hurting them. They're hurting people.
Yeah.
And they don't get discernment that there's positive and negative energy. So everything positive goes to the other side. Everything negative gets shed off and left behind in the earthly realm. And the problem they run into, it looks like, feels like, and sounds like the deceased, they assume wrongly that it is the person on the other side or oh my goodness, they're stuck and they haven't crossed over. I still have clients calling me saying, I spent all my money with this medium on the East Coast and it's always the East Coast. I don't know why. And they were trying to get my mom to the other side and I've spent $5,000 and it's like, are you freaking kidding me? And then I give them positive things that I get from their deceased relative and everybody goes to the other side instantly. The only people that are really stuck are like people that are in a coma or persistent vegetative state or have severe Alzheimer's. Those are the people that are stuck, but it's because their body is still functioning.
I think that there's just a lot of misconception about what you do, about these natural abilities that I feel all humans have. And I feel like for a really long time, it has been very taboo to talk about this sorts of things. And probably for the reasons that you just mentioned, because there's misinformation out there, or like you said, woo-woo, or this isn't normal, or maybe that person has special gifts and I don't. Because you've been doing this for, I believe, 30 years, right?
34. Yeah.
Okay, 34. So what would you say to somebody who is just on the surface of exploring this information, or maybe they have had some experiences themselves that they can't quite explain, and they've kind of steered away from it because they're worried about what other people are going to think. Do you have any advice for somebody that could help them really step into their authenticity and their natural abilities?
They just need training. And I love teaching people to do this. I've got clients that are now doing this for a living. And everybody's like, oh, aren't you worried about the competition? Oh, hell no, I'm not worried about the competition. I love teaching this, and I love training other people to do it. And I've written 3 books so far. The method is the same in all 3 books because I haven't found a better method or a way to change the method. It just works. As you're starting to form a question to somebody who's non-physical, the answer's already sent back to you. So it's like, what about, do you want to, and it's the same thing if you're communicating with animals. And so people miss it. They want to get into their whole question or their whole statement and then they miss it. So it's the most important thing is to listen faster. And like with animals, you're going to get a pulse of information, a taste, a smell, a sound, a feeling, or a visual image. And so it's once you start listening in a different way, it gets really easy. And the most important thing is to stay grounded. And that you do with visualization and intention. And my books teach you how to do that. And I love to coach people to do this. It's a blast because when they call me and I work with them, I have them do readings for me. I have them tune into my dogs or my horses or, somebody that I have on the other side. It's amazing what they come up with. And none of this stuff is basically public information either.
Right. It's not. This was something for me that I've held very close to me. And really what it comes down to was fear of judgment of other people.
Oh, sure.
Fear of other people not understanding.
Jen, you've got to say what anyone thinks of me is none of my business.
It's
have
true.
to say that.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you get people manipulating you without you even realizing that it's happening.
Right. Right. And I think that in the world that we live in right now, there is so much fakeness out there. People presenting in a way that is not authentic. Correct. And so for me, part of my story and part of my journey has been coming back to this authenticity and this who I am, and things that we're talking about right now are who I am. That is who all of us is. And
yes.
I think that we can tap into that and really reconnect with that. Learning how to understand it and work with it is extremely important because you don't want to be turned on all the time. And I don't know if you can relate to that.
I don't have an off switch. And it's really been hard for me because I didn't have anybody train me. I'm self-taught.
Right.
And so I never got an off switch, and it can be very, very distracting. And I almost want to say painful because I can look at somebody and know they're dying. I can just look at somebody and know what their health issues are. And it's like, what are you going to do with that information? You're not going to go running up to them and tell them. That's ambushing people with information in a reading is so freaking unethical. And we know somebody who does it all the time who's on TV. They're ambush readings. You never do that because you never know what that person's going to do with the information. They may go home and kill themselves, and you're freaking responsible. You are. Yeah. So you have to have really impeccable ethics when you do this work. Is this going to help? Is this going to heal?
It's the energy behind what you're doing, right? Sure. And it's the energy behind what you're saying. For me, I had a similar experience for a long time where I didn't know how to shut it off. And so it was just almost like an information overload. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of things that scared me, to be honest with you, that were coming through too. It's not always sunshine and rainbow information that comes through. And so I got to a point where I was really, really, this was when I was more in my teenage years. I got to a point where I was really, really frustrated with just the overload of information. And it was starting to feel more like a curse than a blessing because
Jan, what you're saying is so true and so valid. And I know that there are lots of people in psych wards that just have these abilities and don't know what to do with them. Or they've got a walk-in. The spirit of somebody that's deceased walked into them. And then they have 2 personalities warring inside the same body. I think there was a TV show or movie about that. We need to be able to embrace it and then use it to try to help others with it.
I realized at a certain point, and there was certain information that crossed my path, that it was really as simple as putting a boundary in place. I'm okay with this coming through if I invite it, but I'm also not okay with it coming through if it's just everything's trying to come to me. And that was the moment where everything changed for me. And I realized it felt like I took my power back in that situation.
Yes. Oh God, that's incredible. It's really funny, but people will say, I say, how can I help? And they say, you tell me. When I connect to someone and I do the 3-point connection that I teach, I might as well have walked into a bar at happy hour because I am being bombarded with information. So if you were in a bar in happy hour, what conversation are you going to listen to? Which one is the most important one? That's why I say, how can I help? Who do you want to talk to? Age, species, what's the problem? That gives me enough energetic information that I can connect to them. Because otherwise, I'm overwhelmed. I'm absolutely overwhelmed because I'm on so many different channels all at one time. And so I teach this with the books, with the training, how to just shut out all of that chatter that has nothing to do with what you're trying to focus on. Now, there are times when I'm doing, and this is my show. This is so exciting because this is what my TV show is going to be. I start doing a reading on a pet, a horse or a dog, cat, buck and bull, whatever it is. And then guidance goes, just look over here. And it's like, what? And they point me to the person and go, and I get it. And I get whatever it is. It's either relationships or finances or health, or they're grieving for somebody that they've lost. And I'm able to say, okay, we're good on your horse or your cow or your dog or whatever. And we talk about your stuff. And usually the minute I broach that subject, they just bawl. They just start bawling because I've hit the nail on the head with what their issue is that they're going through. And then we work on that. That's my show. It's so exciting.
That's super exciting. Can you tell us a little bit more about your show?
Every time I do a reading, almost every time, and I do, and somebody calls me about an animal because animals are freaking family members. They are, and they're so concerned. And we focus on the animal, and then usually partway through the reading, I am terribly distracted by guidance saying we need to talk to them about this problem, and then we work on that, and it's so freaking healing for them. Oh my goodness. Like some barrel racer's grandfather, who was their biggest fan, comes through, from the other side, does quirky, detailed things that they know I'm definitely talking to the grandfather. And it's so fun. So that's basically the gist of it. And then it'll have all kinds of other fun things in there because I've got crazy horses that do weird things that I did not teach them to do. And I've got 2 puppies that are nuts. And just the usual stuff that I do, going to the feed store and just doing my thing.
I love it. It's like an inside peek to your world.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Going back to talking about how healing it is for people to have these experiences, like when you do a reading for them or their animals and it shifts into something that they need to understand about themselves. I think that right now, in my opinion, and I'm curious if you agree with this, one of the biggest problems that I see in the world right now is that we are so disconnected. We are so disconnected from ourselves. We are disconnected from others. We're disconnected from Mother Earth and the animals and all of the things because we are all one, really. And what I'm finding is that people are really seeking this out. They're really seeking out healing and connection. And that's where somebody like you comes in because you're almost like a bridge of connection, right?
That's a really good descriptor. It really is because, we forget that we're 99% energy and only 1% physical. You can go research this. Don't take my word for it. But we're 99% energy. We're just running around in little meat suits. Disease, I have found, is issues in the tissues. Disease is caused by stuck negative emotions. And the scientists and researchers have proven that cells respond to emotions. There's also that guy that did messages from the water. And we think about our body's 60% water. I think, don't hold me to that, but he showed how water can change depending on what's labeled on the outside of the beaker. And it changes how it freezes. It's a fascinating thing. And to think we're 60% water and we look in the mirror and go, I hate you, you're ugly, you're stupid, and we give all that negative stuff to ourselves. Well, everything in our system is going to be impacted by that negativity. And I'm just fascinated by the fact that disease is issues in the tissues, and I call it dis-ease. And I really believe very strongly, after doing this for 34 years, there's only one cause of disease, and it's disempowerment. We're born powerful. We've just come from source energy. And even though we're a helpless infant, we're powerful. We know that. And we know we've come here to create because we're imbued with the essence of the Creator in every cell of our body. We are not separate from God. We're God in a meat suit to create. And little by little, people take your power and they tell you you're too stupid, you're too ugly, you're a girl, you're a boy, whatever. And they take our power. So by the time we hit puberty, we're messed up. We're trying to find out who we are. We're heading towards adulthood. We are freaking clueless. We really are. And so it's very important to learn how to take your power back. And the very simple exercise that I give people is think of who took your power, and it's usually early childhood. Write them a letter. It's not to send, so you can use all your potty words and tell them off. And then this is so important. You have to burn the letter while you say out loud, nobody's ever going to treat me like that again. And we take our power back. And it's so fascinating to me because it's like whatever habits or beliefs we have as a child, we will pull in people to help us continue to repeat those negative patterns. We'll marry somebody who disempowered us like our mother, or we'll marry somebody who disempowered us like our father, or we'll get a boss that's like that. And we have to just become aware that those are our negative patterns that we have to turn loose. I picture people walking around with one of those 15-foot long canvas bags that the cotton pickers used to use. Have you ever seen pictures of those?
Yeah.
And it's like taking all our negative stuff and putting it in there, putting it in there, putting it in there. And somebody can tap you on the shoulder and go, Terri, that bag you're dragging around with you, that's really stinks. Why don't you just cut that strap and walk away from it? And we would be grabbing it going, no, it's my stuff, lest I forget, right? And it's like all the happy things that happen to you are like freaking fairies flying around your head, So we don't want to turn loose of it because it's like we want to remember our anger, our lack of forgiveness, our hurt, our pain, our suffering. We want to remember all that. And we think we have to drag it with us.
I agree. And I am familiar with the water study that you were talking about. It's so fascinating because it was, he did this experiment where it was like he would speak positive things and negative things. Like he would say, I love you to the water. And then he would say, I hate you. You're horrible.
You're ugly.
Right. And then the water, when he studied it, had such a different composition from,
Sure.
and it's because, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier, everything has an energy, and our
Sure.
words and our thoughts and our feelings have an energy to it. And it's exactly what you were just saying, where a lot of us are carrying this old, heavy baggage around.
Stinky
Right.
garbage. Stinky garbage.
You talked about, we're these little beings who have just come into this body. And I guess the way that I feel about it, or the way that feels true to me, is that at that point, we are still connected. We're completely connected to source.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
As we go on throughout life, these things happen, people tell us things, or events happen, or we have traumas, or we have these experiences that form this belief that we are not connected and that we are separate from ourselves. We're separate from each other. We're separate from source or God or the universe or whatever term you want to use. I think this goes back to what we were talking also about the abilities that everybody has. It's that connection and that the all-knowing source, right? It is information. And so really, when you're reconnecting with yourself and you're tapping into information, it's really just connecting to source. It's connecting to what is.
I think we are always connected. we lose the awareness of the connection. I just wanted to clarify that. We
Right.
stay connected to everybody else. I think we lose an awareness of that connectedness.
Sure.
And so we feel separate.
For intersecting there, because that's a better way to describe it. And I agree with you. Absolutely.
We're taught that God is something out there, external, in the heavens. And it's like, what universe?
Yeah.
Where? And people have been taught that it's a guy with a beard on a cloud. I mean, that's ludicrous. Because everybody that has one of those near-death experiences describes exactly the same thing, this being of light and love, radiating light and love. And that's it. And everybody, and you can hear from that information. You get messages from that information. And so people like you and me that are doing this work all the time, we know where we're getting that information from. It's not internal, other than the fact that we're also God energy. But if you just tune in, it's there all the time.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, is tuning in and,
yes.
Having the intention
and the awareness.
And the awareness. Absolutely. And awareness just comes from understanding and learning and having these experiences and being willing to explore, I think, and question the things that we've been taught or the things we believe to be true, and questioning those things. You and I both, it sounds, believe that we have the ability to create healing for ourselves. And the way that I look at energy healing is really, for me, I'm just the facilitator. And this is when I'm coaching clients as well.
Of course.
Like, I'm just the facilitator. You're doing the work, right? Like you're the one that you weren't ready for this right now. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. And so it's really just me tapping into my intuition. And like you said, tuning into that certain frequency where then I can be that bridge to help people connect to them healing themselves. And that's how I do it. Do you agree with that? Is that something?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Because the healing is always up to the individual. I've seen it both ways where, my sister was diagnosed with lymphoma and given 6 months to live. And family members are not supposed to work with family members. It doesn't work. So I sent her to somebody that I know and trust. And she had one session and called me from the airport on the way home and said, it's gone. I felt it leave my body. And I've had that. It's like bubble wrap going off in your cells. It's the weirdest feeling when the disease is leaving. And she had a scan 2 weeks later, and her doctor called her up and said, what the hell did you do? And she said, why? They said, it's gone. 2 weeks later, it was gone. I had a client in Hawaii they were trying to disconnect life support. And he had a ruptured brain aneurysm. You know what the survival rate on that is? Nothing, right? He woke up out of the coma and went home, and that's unbelievable. And I've had other clients and friends. Oh, my goodness. I have a dear friend, pancreatic cancer. My first thought when she told me was, you're going to beat this because. And I said, you've got this modality and that modality and this. And she did allopathic stuff and she did holistic stuff. And I went over to her house one day and she was cleaning out a shed. And it was like watching The Exorcist, because she said, I'm cleaning out my late husband's effects. And I was waiting for her head to start spinning around because there was so much negativity and so much lack of forgiveness and anger and rage at this late husband. And she had already moved on and gotten married and had a great husband and all this, but that he had killed himself right after they had gotten married because of gambling debts. And I looked at her and I said, that's why you have pancreatic cancer. What? No, it isn't. I said, yeah, you haven't forgiven him. No, it isn't. And she was in resistance to what I was telling her. She died. So I've had it both ways. I've had unbelievable people that took the information, got rid of the negative energy and negative emotions that cause their dis-ease. And then I've had dear people that couldn't do what they needed to do to get rid of the disease. And so I've had it both ways. And you just want to knock them up beside the head when they go, no, I have this. And then people like with autoimmune diseases, this drives me knuck and futz, because autoimmune is the body turning on itself. The only reason the body would turn on itself is out of self-hatred, self-loathing. And sometimes at a very deep level from childhood, infancy, toddlerhood, when they were abused. And yet they get to where they want to own it. Hey, everybody takes care of me. I don't have to work. So they had these, what I call secondary gains, where it's not going to serve them to heal. It's not going to serve them to heal their body because it's too good for them the way they are. And yeah, are they in pain? Are they suffering? Oh my goodness, yes. You cannot imagine the pain and suffering they're going through. But it's still, the secondary gain is too juicy for them to give it up.
Well, right. And I think that that's on a subconscious level. I think a lot of people have no idea what's going on beneath the surface and how these beliefs and this language that we speak to ourselves, the words that we say have such a huge impact because of its energy and how much those thoughts and the words and the feelings absolutely impact our physical bodies and our physical health. And I think a lot of this stuff is on such a subconscious level. And like you said, it roots back to childhood most often. What I've seen with my clients is that I would say majority of the people that I work with, it roots back, and myself included in this, it roots back to things that happened when we were kids and the belief systems that were formed around it. And the narrative that and the story that we've told ourselves our entire lives. And
absolutely.
So, you're
on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I would love for listeners to take away from our conversation today is a few different things. And then I would love for you to, kind of add in your, what you would love for people to take away. What we're talking about right now, if this is, here, use the word woo-woo. If this feels a little woo-woo to you, or if this feels a little like, oh man, like these ladies maybe are off their rocker a little bit or whatever, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. What I would invite people to take away is just consider that there could be more, or that maybe what you believe to be true isn't necessarily all that there is. So that would be the first thing. The second thing that I would love for people to take away from this conversation is that we absolutely have the ability to empower ourselves. And this is what this entire podcast is about. And I'm so passionate about it, taking back our power and really empowering ourselves to heal, to reconnect through love, and to tap into these natural abilities that we're all born with. We have the power to do that if we choose and if we set that intention. And the final thing, if this is something that you're interested in, there are people out there who have been doing this work for a long time, like Terri and incognito myself, right? Because again, this is something that I haven't really put out there until very recently. And the reason that I'm doing this now and talking about this is because I feel it is so, so important. The world needs more people talking about this. The world needs more quote unquote healers out there.
Yes.
And the world needs more love and connection. And so if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, connect with Terri. And so, Terri, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Are there any ways that you would like for listeners to have from our conversation today and just from the work that you do?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I run into is people that are grieving because they don't understand that they're animals and their human relatives, loved ones. They just become completely positive and non-physical. And I think if people could get messages from people that have passed, detailed messages like I get, I think it would help them heal. I have so many people that say, oh my goodness, I feel so much better because they have an animal that dies a horrific death or a child that dies a horrific death. They stay focused on the death. They don't stay focused on how that animal or human is on the other side, that they're just full of piss and vinegar, having a blast, and that nothing negative can go to the other side. I think it's one of the most harmful things that some of the TV mediums talk about is the negativity, because they're dumpster diving, getting negative stuff, and it is not the soul or spirit of the person that is on the other side, and that they never leave us. They're with us all the time. And our animals, it's like, hey, go get a new physical form. I can come back. They can even do walk-ins. And so I'm trying to heal grief for people, I think it's a huge part of my practice. And also doing medical and veterinary intuition, trying to find where they have a disease process, and then how to address it if I know or can find out. The two things I don't do is I don't diagnose and I don't prescribe, but I will tell you what I'm feeling. I did that this morning with a horse, a little foal that didn't want to eat and wasn't absorbing nutrition. And that was a really interesting one, what guidance was showing me. And that everybody has these abilities and they're not scary. If you're getting negative stuff, if you're getting voices telling you go kill people, you need psychiatric help, not to learn to develop your intuitive abilities. We have to be able to, and I've had clients that way. It was like, no, you don't need a reading. I'm refunding your money. You need a psychiatrist. Please go get help, because they were just so out there and a danger. They were a danger. We have to know the limits and the boundaries of this work too. My biggest philosophy is first, do no harm. Don't tell people things that are going to hurt them. This work is so important. There's so many people that go, oh, I hate cancer. Well, freaking cure it. I have so many clients that don't have it anymore. We're not allowed to use the cure word, but they don't have it anymore. They've had to have spontaneous healing put on their medical records. It's like this big, scary monster waiting in the background of everybody's life. And it doesn't need to be. Depending on where it is in the body, there's an emotional reason why you've gotten it. I said this before, there's identical twins, identical genetics, both have the BRCA gene. One will get breast cancer, the other won't. What's the freaking difference? It's what they go through emotionally and how they react to those emotions. That's the difference. So we have to remember disease is issues in the tissues and do our best to release the stuck negative emotions. And I give away energy healing instructions to whoever wants them by email only. If you're stuck, have a reading with me or with Jen. Learn what you can do to change your situation and make better choices too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Terri, for being willing to come on here. I loved this conversation and connecting with you today. And
thank you so much.
I appreciate everything that you're doing for people, for the animals. Really, I think it's so important. So keep up the good work. And you can find Terri at terrij.com. And then also I'm going to post all of her information and links. Like I said, she's an author of 3 books, right? 3. And then I know that you're working on a couple more, it sounds like right now.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm a speaker. You can hire me for speaking. I love doing this. It's so fun. I do reading parties online. So those are really fun. I do it in person, but you can also do them online. It's just a hoot.
Thank you so much, Terri.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you and keep up the good work.